Plugged in 866-224-5422. That's AMP, the number 2.TV. The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Wake Up America with Christina Lynn. I'm your host, and I'm here tonight, as always, to help you open your eyes and see the truth. Many things have changed in our world, and this is a show where you're going to get to talk to some of the experts. You're going to get to hear from people that are on the cutting edge. You're going to get to see the things that are really going on that maybe you don't get to hear every day on the news. This is the show that's going to bring it to you right away. So stay tuned because we have got an amazing guest tonight, someone that you will not believe is going to knock your socks off. Wake Up America starts right now. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Wake Up America with Christina Lynn. And I am your host, Christina Lynn. I have to say, I'm very excited about tonight's show because we have two of my very favorite guests who are just amazing. They're going to be talking with us about one of the topics that, speaking of shining the light on, as we do on Wake Up America, we shine the light on the truth, and we encourage every man, woman, and child to speak up and tell the truth. And this is what has been going on now, particularly in Hollywood and Washington. It's just been amazing that there's been one woman after another woman after another woman, and there unfortunately have even been young men coming out that have been speaking out against sexual harassment, sexual assault, and calling out and shining the light on these sexual predators, particularly in Washington and in Hollywood. So needless to say, this is a very emotional topic. I have to say myself that one of the early shows I did in my career back in the early 90s was with Matt Lauer in Boston. So I had quite a shock just recently with regarding that, because when I knew Matt back in the 90s, he couldn't have been a nicer person. And again, you know, it was just like his co-host said, I had to agree with them. He was nothing but a gentleman to me. So again, there are people that we know, people that particularly being in the entertainment business. I've had this happen with several folks in Washington as well. So we're going to get right on with the topic. And I want to say that this week on Wake Up America, we always have a special hero or a group of heroes. And the heroes this week are the women and the men and the children that have spoken up, that have come out and said, no matter what happens to me, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call out the truth.
Absolutely. And Time Magazine agrees with you.
How wonderful is that Time Magazine chose to make the Person of the Year all of the whistleblowers, all of the women.
And those are the heroes, too. The Time Magazine editorial staff for bringing out the women, Ashley Judd and Taylor Swift and the other beautiful women that are there with them, to say the woman that started the whole thing of Me Too. They're right there on the front, and they're the women and the people of the year. So I agree.
Absolutely.
Hats off to you, Time Magazine, for that decision. Now, let me, without further ado, introduce two of my personal friends who are also very fascinating gentlemen here. It's none other than the Siegel brothers, and yes, they are really brothers. They're also the co-hosts of WNN's Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers, and they're very seasoned sexuality and sexual health professionals. Now, together, and I cannot even believe this because y'all must have started when you were about 10 years old, but you say that between the two of you combined, you have over 50 years of experience in this field. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
that
is true.
I've been inheriting my older brother's jobs for the past 25 years, and indeed, we've carved out a path in South Florida for quite some time.
Yes, well, you definitely, I have to say, your reputation precedes you, and you've done many great things to help a lot of people. You all are very highly regarded, not just in the fields of sexual therapy and sexuality, but also academic sexual education here at the universities. So, and I'm sure those classes are probably very well attended, I would think, right? I heard that you said, I think it's standing room only. Probably for some of those lectures.
Actually, we had a department chair years ago, probably the greatest compliment we ever had, told us that our classes sell out like concert tickets. So.
Well, I think I can understand why, right? Everyone wants to know about the birds and the bees. As they say, sex sells. But now to look at, unfortunately, that's the positive side, because now, you know, it is being taught in schools. People are speaking up, and that's giving us a lot more knowledge and education to say that we don't need to sweep sexuality under the rug.
Well, I
What
have
do
to
you
take
think?
a little objection. We're not there yet.
Okay.
It's not
Right.
really taught in the schools. Sexuality education is
Okay.
still a hot potato politically. Most kids in this country still don't get anything close.
Is
to
it only on the
appropriate
university?
sexuality. No, we're talking
No.
about K through 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Universities, it's bad enough. Colleges have a class and they may or may not feel so good about it. But
Right.
kindergarten through 12th, there should be, this was one of the amazing things to us in the great sex ed wars of the 90s and early 2000s, that Congress has to vote and argue and sometimes fail to pass legislation mandating simply that sex ed be medically accurate. Think of any
Right.
other area of health and wellness
Let,
where
Yes.
we
let,
even
let that
have
sink
that
in.
conversation.
Let that sink in a
That's
little bit.
the truth.
That
How does
there
someone
is an
vote
abject
against?
refusal to even require that this information be medically accurate.
And 25 years later, we're still not any further along. Palm Beach
I hope it's
County
not
is one
the
of the better
stork.
places.
It's not the
Might as
Cabbage
well be
Patch
for
and the
some.
stork, is it?
Sure.
It might as well
Yeah.
be.
Well, let's do hope that we will begin to see much more in that movement. And another reason why that's so important, particularly with younger children, I have noticed that they are trying to get education brought in where they can teach the children that there are things, that you say no to.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And things that are correct. Have you seen any movement because of these problems with predators and whatnot that it's
Well,
improved?
something else that, again, we have a long history of addressing. There is an old classic. Unfortunately, while it's great, it's in a lot of people's minds, it's never really been done well. Most people are familiar with the classic good touch, bad touch programs.
Right.
They're
Tell us a
vitally
little bit about
important.
that.
There's no kids that are too young. 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds are not too young to say, just as you said, to get a message that they're the boss of their bodies.
Yes.
People don't have the right to touch them inappropriately. If mommy or daddy are helping them bathe, or at the doctor's office, the pediatrician, all the usual things. But traditionally, good touch, bad touch programs tend to just really scare kids
Right.
instead of empowering them.
Really?
Right? They
Okay.
should be very short, very empowering, a wonderful message about body ownership, proper names of body parts.
That's a key. I mean, again,
That's
a lot of it is
that's
this
abuse
stranger
prevention.
danger that's still,
Yeah.
kind of what runs a lot of those programs.
Wow.
But, we believe very strongly, I've been talking for many, many years about how important it is for kids to be able to identify and name the parts of their body, because that's ownership.
Yes.
And if we want from a young age kids to be able to own their bodies and be able to set those boundaries around touch, we have to start then. They have to know what these things are called.
Yes.
You can't own something you can't name.
They have to be
And
educated.
Absolutely. And, we've always felt it very important that even for adolescents, negotiating relationships, negotiating how far people are willing to go, how far they're not willing to go, how they communicate that's really important, but it also kind of gets left out because I think there's a danger for a lot of people that may border on talking about pleasure and what they can do. And we still have this very, very, I would say, puritanical, very prescriptive way of thinking about sex and sexuality.
I
Yeah.
think I'd also have to add that this contributes to a lot of the gender scripting and the
Yes.
gender stereotypes that contribute to the problem we're talking about today.
Right.
The bigger problem of why in 2017 sexual harassment seems to be coming to this head, our awareness. Of course, this is by no means a new problem. This is the way it's always
Right.
been, as we discussed earlier.
Right.
The only positive here is that this is the year things have exploded.
Right.
They
and we're
have
naming it.
exploded. Yes.
Yes, and we're
Yeah.
naming it.
And thank you, because that brought me to my very next question. And that is, let's look at what's going on first in Washington. Now, they have said that $17 million of our taxpayer money, the money that we work hard for and that we're taxed on, was put back in a secret slush fund for congressmen and senators to pay off women that they had harassed.
Going back for years,
Right.
I thought
Right.
I heard closer to 24 or whatever the number, millions of dollars.
Yeah, depending on how
Yeah.
far we go back.
Just what a
They
statement
said that was
does-
the
what
tip
a
of the
statement
iceberg, the
does that
17
make,
million.
Exactly.
Right? That such
Yes.
a slush
Exactly.
funds exists for
Yes.
the sole purpose of paying off women to shush, hush,
Right.
hush. Don't.
And my understanding is that's not going to change. There was some sort of decision that was made to keep that and keep the American taxpayers on the hook for such things.
As you can tell
That's
in our
shocking.
field, we're driven oftentimes by outrage, by a sort of a quixotic, tilting at windmills and this rage against the system that's just so it's entrenched. The sexism goes back to the cavemen times.
Oh, I'm sure it's been going on for a long time. And,
Sure.
we have found out that over the years, many of our beloved politicians did have extramarital affairs. And, of course, people now know about President Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe and many other situations.
And George Bush Sr.
Right. Oh, yes. Yeah. Now, what do you all
and of
think
course,
about
Bill
that? Let's look
Clinton.
at that. George Bush Sr. Now, he's grabbing the behinds or
Oh, well, that's
the
now.
doddering
We don't
Right.
even
man
back
from
in
the
the day.
wheelchair.
Sure.
yeah, back in the day.
But
yes.
I think that speaks to sort of your basic point in all of this, that when we look at sex and sexuality, there is what people would call the sort of the light side and then the dark side. But it's really all one, two of the same side, and it's about power. And I
Yes.
think because we've never really come to grips with what sexual power is, particularly women.
Yes.
I will say that on a non-conscious level, right, and we talked about this before as well, it's not something that most guys are aware of, nor would most guys admit to. But on a non-conscious level, we are, as men, intimidated by women's sexual power. Have been since the dawn of civilization.
Thank
Women-
you, Larry.
One of the secrets
Thank
we're
you.
supposed to
That's why
keep.
women have been burned as witches. That's why there's been so much misogyny, because the physical domination was really all a lot of guys had. Because nature knew what it was doing, giving you the assignment of childbirth, right? In dealing with the pain
Right.
and managing all this kind of stuff. If men had to give birth, there would still be a population crisis, but it would be a crisis of like 14 of us walking around, right?
Well, speaking about that, my mentor, God bless her, Joan Rivers, did a movie about, having a man give birth way back in the day. And so, again, you're right. There's always been that saying where we women would say, hey, we're the ones that give birth. And so I could see where there is intimidation.
Yeah.
But now let's take that a step further and let's look at the power. Again, when you look at powerful men, okay, and we're looking at Al Franken, let's take him as an example. And let's look at congressmen there that have also been now brought out as
If
well.
I may, and again, where you go,
Yes.
I just really feel like I have to throw this in. I
Yes.
think the conflation of Al Franken
Yes.
with some of the others is kind of a mistake that a lot of people are making.
Okay.
My understanding is that these women who have been accusing him, these are all been before he was in power. He was an entertainer. He was,
Colleagues,
again,
fellow
as a
comedians.
humorist.
The
There was
picture,
a different
the
intention.
picture was before, but the women from the fair, from the
Oh, like
Minnesota
the
Fair.
picture grabbing,
Yeah, they said that
accused
he
of
was
groping
also
during
grabbing
taking pictures
Okay.
their
in the state
behinds
fair.
Okay.
with pictures. So
Right.
that was coming out, and they did say that was during that time. But I agree with you. Now, one thing I will say for Senator Franken is he was not taking money out of the slush fund, and he did mention that too. Whereas many of
And
the
he copped
others
to it.
were doing that.
Yeah, I mean, when I think there's just this kind of sophomoric frat boy, boorish, immature sexuality, like honk playing, thinking that's
Right.
funny. Those kinds of photographs,
Right.
Right.
And then there's predatory, exploitive. I would certainly, personally,
Abuse
I wouldn't
of
put
power.
Al Franken and Harvey Weinstein in the same
No.
in the same stroke.
Or
Weinstein
John
Weinstein was a
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Or,
guys.
or Representative
what-
Conyers as well. What do you think about Representative Conyers? See, that's another thing that I
I
wanted to
think
mention.
that was a case of sort of using his power over these women,
yes.
creating that imbalance in their status.
And he was writing checks out of that slush fund,
That's
from what
right.
I understand, to quite a few of them. Well, I just noticed that it's about time. I could sit here and talk with you all night, but we're going to take a break. I do believe it's time for us to have a commercial break, but we will be right back, and I've got a lot more to talk to you all about.
Wonderful.
Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I want to invite you to tune in every Monday night at 6 p.m. right here on WNN for my brand new show, Wake Up America with Christina Lynn. This is the show that will open your eyes and show you the truth. Believe me, you'll love it.
Times are tough, and right now those in the commercial world know that being heard via advertisements is the name of the game. AmpSquare.tv understands how important advertisement is and is proud to express that it's truly the only plugged-in internet television production company on the market. AMP2.tv live streams all their shows across all the major selling markets in the U.S. and abroad. Call them at 866-224-5422. The AmpSquare.tv library allows productions to be seen over and over again, making commercial platforms more usable. Call 866-224-5422. Toll free 866-224-5422. AMP2.tv, the first and only internet television network that's truly plugged in. 866-224-5422. That's AMP, the number 2.tv.
I think so. And we're back. I could just sit here and speak with these wonderful guests, the Siegel brothers, all night long. But it is a very serious topic. And we're going to even move to a little bit more of a serious side of this topic tonight and look a little bit more at Hollywood now. We've talked a little bit about Washington. And, of course, you know, congressmen have, again, there are so many, before we do move to Hollywood, just to comment another one about Washington, the fact that there's so many interns. There's so many young women that are so excited to be working with a congressman, a senator. They're there in Capitol Hill, and they're just, you know, overwhelmed by the excitement of these opportunities. I even heard a statistic that, you know, over 50% of the people there on Capitol Hill are in their 20s because they're interns and they're assistants. And it would be very easy for these men of power to expect sexual favors.
Yes.
So again, how do you feel we can change our society, particularly when it comes to government officials and leaders of our country and of other countries, you know, around the world? How can this be changed so that these men stop abusing this power?
Well, to change in midstream is certainly a tough one. I think, you know, bringing all this out to the fore, letting women in particular know that there is an avenue that they can go through, that they don't have to suffer silently. They don't have to take this stuff.
It is a crime
is a crime.
Retaliate against a whistleblower.
Right.
But, you know, ultimately it's an education issue. We have to change the way we raise men.
Right. That's really where it has to
Thank you.
start.
It's not another thing that we've raved, just complained and whined about for so many years is how many rape prevention, sexual assault prevention programs have been aimed at women and how they men prevent.
Yeah, it's a men's issue.
assault.
Sexual harassment, sexual assault, rape, these are men's issues,
Even
not
if a
women's
woman
issues.
is naive, even if an excited 21-year-old is thrilled to be having the chance to get credit for college and work for a politician, it is ultimately on that politician's shoulders to understand the position of power he holds or she holds over a person and not care about who hit on who or who suggested what. It's always the person in a position of power, even the nice guys.
Right.
The Matt Lauers, the John Edwards, you know.
And this is the socialization,
right.
you know, because when it gets to that point of power, then you have this sort of all this socialization that comes to the head where men become very opportunistic. How many men look at women as potential opportunities?
Right.
Not as colleagues, not as another human being, but as a potential opportunity for a sexual conquest.
That's
and
true.
when they get into the position where they have the power, they tend to lord it over these people.
I was
That's
going to say,
right.
in the world of fantasy, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's natural.
Right.
We're hardwired for that. But in the real world, to have the impulse to control, to go, ooh, but that's not leaving fantasy. Do you remember, we always laugh about this, the creepy Diet Coke commercial that Bob Dole did after he lost his bid for the White House, where that was when Britney Spears was still that kind of virgin slut persona. She was still the ex-Mouseketeer, and she's on the big flat screen TV with the the belly shirt singing, and Bob Dole's in the big easy chair watching the TV. There's an old dog lying on the ground next to him, and the dog whimpers, and Bob Dole goes, "Easy boy." Right, like the two old dogs leering at the hot young thing on the screen.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I do
So we
remember
get
that.
it.
Yes.
We get why that's cute. Right, but the old lechy dogs should know better.
Right.
That it goes no further than the fantasy.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Ever.
That's
Especially
a very good
when it comes
example.
to a physical line, whether it is touching somebody else's body, and when it's not invited, it's not wanted.
Right.
And we've been trying to wrap our heads around how so many of these guys, like the Louis C.K. and some of these other guys, what is the motivation behind exposing their genitals to somebody
And thinking
and
that's
thinking
wanted.
right and
Yeah.
thinking
That
that
those
something
poor
good
women
can come out of
wanted
it?
that.
A turn on.
Right.
Well, and thank you. And that's what Charlie Rose even was quoted as
Yeah.
saying. He said that he thought everything was consensual.
Right.
He didn't realize that taking a shower in front of his assistant or whatever was not consensual.
Right.
So
Right. Without
that's-
ever bothering to
that's
ask
shocking.
if you mind.
Again,
Yeah.
that's very shocking to hear that kind of thing, and it's a fine line. And now, so of course, there's Matt Lauer, there's Charlie Rose, there's Bill O'Reilly.
It's uncountable.
So
Kevin
it's-
Spacey.
And it's
Journalists,
going to keep
television
going.
journalists.
Any,
Yes.
we're going to that's this big rock that has finally been moved.
Yes.
And all of this that's been underneath it, and I think it's going to come down regardless of the context. Every just about all these guys with positions of power,
Right.
we're going to see this.
Very true. And now let's move on then to Hollywood, because we've covered the TV journalist. We've looked at Hollywood. We've looked now at Washington. But let's take another look at Hollywood, and we're going to talk about Weinstein. Now, what is the latest? You were telling me something about that, Ricky, or Dr. Siegel, I should say.
Ricky.
Yes, about Weinstein is not going to be indicted. Is that right? Have you heard anything about that?
No, I don't recall.
Okay,
I
well,
know that
I'm
he
not sure.
scurried
I
off.
can't-
He scurried off to the desert, like so many of these guys, to hide behind a sex addiction diagnosis. Another thing we take issue with,
Right.
To sort out his demons. But I had not heard anything about whether.
No,
any,
and he's looking at, again,
litigation.
crossing several lines,
Yes.
into sexual assault, if not rape.
Yeah, because actually, you know what? Excuse me. I want to say it was one of my producers that did say today earlier that
I mean, look, you've been in Hollywood.
it doesn't look like he's going to be indicted. Yes, I've
Right,
been in
and when
Hollywood.
we first met, remember we had that conversation that Harvey
Yes.
Weinstein certainly did not invent the casting couch.
True,
Right.
it's very
You
true.
know, back to the
Right.
silent movies, and from the very first movie warehouses, men in power said, "Hey, you want to be a movie star?"
That's right.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
So I don't know that I see it that different than Washington. It's still men with power that they're holding
Right.
over people's heads. And
Yes.
if people want that career, then they kind of have more than gotten the message that you basically have to pay to play.
Very true. And see, sometimes people will say, well, why did those women give in to them? Well, they're afraid they're going to lose their careers.
You know,
They're afraid that they're going to be,
Right.
like, you'll never work in this town again.
Right.
Supposedly is what
And
Weinstein
that's often what's
said.
just said.
Just
yeah.
as you asked that, I was wondering in my head, how controversial can we get here? I was thinking about this today, and I don't want to, come across as like being a northeastern liberal slamming the South, but
But you
I was
are.
thinking about this. How many people have been saying, well, back in that day, that like the allegations against Roy Moore, like it was an honor. People would
Right.
have been honored to find out that a local attorney wanted to date their daughter. And
man of
mothers
power.
and even fathers said, "Oh, well, I would have been thrilled if he came around." He said he was such a gentleman. He asked their mom's permission to take them out. Oh, I'm just so creeped out. Like, what parent would consent or
yeah.
find that there's gain for them? What power in the community would we get if our 17-year-old daughter is dating a 32-year-old prosecutor? I don't care if it's not illegal. It's creepy. It's predatory.
It is.
Yeah,
It is
well,
predatory.
I can't even imagine what those parents were thinking. But another thing too is that if you look back at the Hollywood culture as well and compare that, there are people that are bringing their children in to audition for films and to
There's a
work
whole-
in television.
We're gonna need another half hour for that one.
Yeah.
Right,
And
right.
unfortunately, now all of a sudden they found out about predators such as, as Kevin Spacey.
Sure.
So this is a whole nother ball of wax that is also, to me, much more serious. The pedophilia that has now been exposed. And as you were saying, films are being changed. So many films are being changed out now. And it was very interesting how quickly Hollywood wiped everything to do with Kevin Spacey
Right.
out of everything. And I noticed the new film that he was in that's about J. Paul Getty, that one, they took Christopher Plummer and
Right,
put him in
replaced
because they
the
didn't want to
scenes.
lose that multi-million dollar picture.
Right.
But they knew that they could never release anything again. And of course, House of Cards, a lot of people were disappointed because they liked that show.
Sure.
And they said, oh, I guess there goes that show. But, you know, again, yes, they're going to shut that show down, and I feel they had to do that until they could replace him.
Right.
Needless to
And,
say.
and I think we also need to come to grips.
Yes.
Not only, you know, the way we socialize males, but the way we, from a very early age, sexualize girls. One of the things that used to drive me absolutely crazy was, you know, several years ago when we first heard the case of JonBenet Ramsey. For a very long time, nobody knew her name because she was always referred to as the 6-year-old beauty queen. And all of the photographs that were shown were not photographs of a 6-year-old girl. She was all, forgive the phrase, all tarted up and in all the makeup and you know, in these, you know, we look at, think it's cute that little, you know, girls are twerking and all that kind of stuff. We sexualize girls from a very young age. So by the time we look at Hollywood movies and we look at a lot of these media images, we see a lot of that. So again, can we be surprised that these people who are in the business of creating these images, are they themselves responding to these images in real life?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And, you know, that is something that's very shocking. And I do believe that people that saw those pictures said, well, what are those parents thinking? Why were they letting their daughter being dressed up like a little tiny 6-year-old Marilyn Monroe? You know, that's just really, you know, it's just not appropriate. And then for what happened, I think that was also a wake-up call, hopefully, to many parents and many people that have allowed that to happen to
Well,
their
I have
children.
to say, since then, we've actually had TV shows called, Toddlers and Tiaras?
Oh, yeah, that's
So
right.
I don't know that it had sort of
another
an
cultural
impact
thing.
on that. It's
relates on
continuing. It's
Yeah.
Raising sexually healthy kids.
Right.
Very true.
Right.
Well, I have to say, I could go on all night, but unfortunately, we're just about out of time. And I do want to tell the audience that, and make a special announcement that you all are now in pre-production for your own television show.
yes,
So we're very
yes.
excited about that, and
so thrilled to be working
I'm
with
involved
So
with
wonderful.
that with you
yeah.
and that project. So I'm very excited about it. You do have a lot to say and a lot to tell us about, and we want to hear from you out there, the audience. So be sure, if you want to communicate, to send me an email if you'd like to at wakeupwithchristinalynn@gmail.com, and you can also go to our website, the Wake Up America website, Wake Up with Christina Lynn. And we want to invite you back next week for another edition of Wake Up America with Christina Lynn. In the meantime, remember, you make a difference. There was only one person that started Me Too and
That's right.
started this.
That's all
And
it
look what
takes.
she did. So until then, have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Well, that's about all we have time for tonight. But I want to thank you all for listening. We've got a fantastic and really loyal audience that wants to wake up. Wake Up America is your show. Be sure and tune in next week right here at 6 o'clock on WNN with me, Christina Lynn, and with some of the most outspoken and outstanding guests that you can ever hear on radio. Until then, just reach out to wakeupamerica.com. Let me know what you think. We want to hear your comments, and we want to make sure and have you come join us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks again. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Remember to wake up and look for the truth. And you do make a difference. One person can change this world. So wake up, speak up, and America will see you next week right here on Wake Up America.
The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Hi,